In this lesson, I'm going to talk about using custom image-based light texture files, as well as files that you can download from Adobe. To follow along, go to Working Files and go to Photoshop Projects and open up IBL file.psd. We have a couple of spheres here. The one on the left is reflective, 100% reflective, and the one on the right is not reflective at all, 0% reflective. And I want to add an image-based light to this scene. So I'm going to go over to Environment and click on this little swatch there. That gives you this option, New Texture, Load Texture, or the same thing happens with this drop-down arrow there. We'll go to New Texture, because we need to have a new texture before we can actually start working on it, or we could load a texture file. So we'll start with this New Texture here. And we'll take the size of the document as the size of our texture, but notice the aspect ratio here is not square. You might want to get a wide one, and I'll show you a wide one later. Click OK. You notice how things change here. The lighting kind of changes here, and this little ball here shows up, and I'll explain that little ball here in a little while. Let's go over and edit that one now. Click this. Edit the texture. Let's put them side by side. Go to Window, Arrange, 2 up vertical. Work over here. We'll get the gradient tool. Get that colorful gradient there and add a gradient. The direction doesn't have to be perfect here. And let's close this down for a second so you can see it. I'll click over here, and voila. The scene is being illuminated by this gradient. Not only is the gradient providing color, but it's actually illuminating it with color. The one on the left is brighter than the one on the right because that is more reflective. Click over here again and go turn on the environment view here. Get the selection tool selected. And look what happens here. Get this little ball in the middle and you can see the whole gradient here. Let's spread things out a bit. I'll go Window, Arrange, consolidate all the tabs, and go back here again. You can see the whole gradient there in the background. This little ball lets you control the gradient. The two main differences between an image-based light texture file and an environment texture file is that with an image-based light you can control the image itself. You can roll it around like that to adjust its position. Now the spheres aren't moving. The image-based light is moving and it's just reflecting off the spheres, left and right, up and down like that. And the other difference is that the image-based light illuminates the scene, whereas an environment map just provides color for the scene. If I go back over here to environment, you can see that we got this set to 100. If I drop it to 0, you can see that you still see it reflecting off as if it were an environment texture file, as opposed over here where you see nothing because it's not reflective at all. So I click back on this. We'll make it slightly reflective just so you can see it a little bit like that. Also, let's change the color bit so you see how color interacts with the image-based light. Click on this, make it blue. And you get a sense of how that works, how they work together. Okay, I want to replace this image-based light with a file. So I'm going to go back over here to Environment. Let's click this and replace the texture. Let's track down a texture file here. Let's go to Photospin Images, and we'll get this Jungle Low Res. Now, you don't have to have a high-res file when you're working with an image-based light. In fact, it could be something like 256 by 256. You just want to kind of wrap it around your object. But you can use a high-res, and it will be more distinct if you do that. We'll double-click on this. Now it immediately changes, and we see it there in the background again. I'll drag it to the right like that, and I'm moving the background. So what you're seeing here is not what you're seeing there. This stuff here is behind the spheres. As I drag it to the right, you'll see the back moves. But in fact, what we're seeing here in the spheres is what we can't see right now. Just sort of keep in mind that the spheres here are inside a giant globe. We're inside this globe made by this image. If I pull it up so you can see the top like this, you'll eventually see the seam at the top. Right there, where they all come together at the top. Go down like this. See the bottom as well. And notice we're seeing the bottom here in the background, but what we're seeing here in the spheres is the top. That's because we're inside this giant invisible globe. Right now it's visible, but when we're done with this thing, when we get out of the environment group here, then it'll go away and we'll see it as people will see this when we're done with the project. It's kind of bright there on the left-hand side. The reason it's kind of bright is because this infinite light is also shining on it. Let me turn off the light for a second. There you go. What's really cool about using the image-based light is that you can get really a true reflection off there. It looks like it's just like a shining glass or metal ball. All right, now I want to use image-based lights created by Adobe. To get those guys, you need to go online. So go to 3D, Get More Content. That'll take you to this web page. And down here is a group of image-based lights. You click on that, and you can get a basic set or what they call a creative set. I won't provide them for you. You can just go get them on your own. But I'll show you how they work. I'll close this down. I've got these guys tucked away inside a folder that I made. Let me show you how these guys look inside Bridge. This is the basic stuff, and you're wondering, what the heck is this all about? But when you use these guys, it makes it look like they're in some kind of a room, like with a light on the ceiling and a couple of windows. Pretty cool, actually. Here are the creative ones. They actually have these sort of rooms here like that with these lovely windows. You can pick any one of these guys out. This one even has a stand there as if you're inside some studio. All right, we'll try a couple of these guys out. Over here, replace the texture. Go to that little prep folder I made. They'll take a while to load up because they're high dynamic range files. I don't think it's really necessary to have them be HDR files, but nevertheless, there they are. Let's just take a look at this guy by just rolling it around a bit like that. It does give the impression that it's in a room somehow. It's a light on the ceiling. You can twist it around any way you want. Notice how it matches this aspect ratio over here. It's not critical to do that, but it can be a little helpful. There we go. Go to one of the advanced ones. Replace texture. Take a look at these guys by name instead. And we'll go to this room A here. The room A has those little cushiony looking things there. Now it looks so distinct that this may not be what you want. You might want to actually kind of tone this down by putting a blur on the image-based lights. Because these are high dynamic range files, they're very sharply defined, and you may not want them to be so sharply defined like this. Now what happens if you add an environment to one of these guys? How does it relate to the IBL when there's an environment? Let me click on this one, make it active, click again to get its materials up. I'm going to add an environment to it. Go over here to Environment, click that drop-down arrow, and go to Load Texture, and go to our Photo Spin Images. Load up this jungle low-res again. There it is showing up here, very reflective, very sharply defined, because we have now wrapped a globe around this single object, and since it's 100% reflective, it's showing it extremely sharply. But notice the IBL, the image-based light, is having no effect at all. You don't see these little windows showing up at all in there. There's an IBL wrapped around here as well, but it's not showing up. So what happens is that the environment trumps the IBL, just so you know. Let me go back to environment here. I'll increase the brightness. I'll increase the intensity. It will make the scene brighter, but it doesn't add that texture that you added here as a separate file. It just makes it brighter. I want to show you one more thing. You can use an IBL as a background. Now you can always have a separate layer below your 3D layers that can work as a background, but it's better sometimes to have a background built into the 3D layer so it interacts with your 3D objects. To do that, you just go on down here inside the environment panel. It says Set IBL as Background. So whatever the IBL is now, I click on that, and it will be a background. It'll show up here inside that little panel there as if it were a background image. If I click away from environment to the current view, for example, you'll see how it will look relative to these objects, which is kind of nifty because you've got the background there shining down on this thing so that it gives the impression that this thing is in that room. So if you want to give the impression that something is inside the room and show the room, you can always have the IBL serve as a background. So that's how you work with custom-made IBL texture files and also those that you can download from Adobe.